Everybody, it's Dr. Joe here on this Wednesday evening, chilly Wednesday here in the DC area. I hope you're doing well wherever you're tuning in from, and I hope you had a great week. I certainly had a good week, and getting ready for another good week. So, well, it's a good week so far, anyway. And hope it, wherever you are, that you're making moves towards your real estate goals. And we're in the 10th month now, or 11th month, so almost the year is over. So hopefully, if you haven't done so, check your goals that you set earlier the year, and it's not too late to get back on track if you're off track, and make some progress. So that way, 2023 hopefully was a good year for you. It certainly turned out to be a good year for me. I've done a lot of travel this year, which is what I wanted to do, and visited 5 countries, and hopefully I'll be able to go to at least another one more before the end of the year, and so on. Okay, so today we're going to focus on seller financing. That's the topic of discussion today: seller financing, and why am I choosing that subject for today? The reason being is that today the Fed decides to keep the interest rates the same. But as we all know, compared to a year or 2 years ago, interest rates have risen quite a bit. And as a result of that, typically what happens is that banks and lenders become a lot more tighter on their lending requirements. So it's a little bit more tougher to get loans. They're a bit more conservative. And compared to a year or 2 years ago. And as a result of that, sometimes people are getting denied loans. And so if you still want to build your portfolio, and especially during the slow times, and you're going to need to look for other alternative ways of raising money. And seller financing is one particular strategy that I've used a few years back, and has some mixed results. So in times whereby banks tend to pull back on their lending requirements, there's usually an increase in interest in alternative or creative financing strategies, of which seller financing fits that mold. So we're going to talk about that today. And specifically, we're going to talk about 3 strategies that you may want to consider. One is called Subject To. Another one is called Lease-Options or Rent to Own. And the third one is called Seller Carryback. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And it should be a good one. And as usual, if you have questions, please tune in for, put your questions to me so you can pick my brain. We'll be getting to Ask Dr. Joe Now segment a bit later on, about another 20-25 minutes from now. So get your questions lined up, and I'll be more than happy to try to answer them if I can do. Okay, so let's get going. The power of seller financing. As I said before, in a market whereby when there's a shift in the market, especially when banks become a lot more tighter and stringent on their qualification requirements, if you're trying to build a portfolio, if you're trying to buy houses, then you got to figure out ways to do that without involving banks. And one of those ways anyway, is to have the seller essentially be the bank. And so so the seller either borrows you money, takes back a note, or you take over the seller's financing, and so on. So let's talk about why seller financing is your secret weapon during this time. So the question becomes this: how can seller financing transform your investment gain? How can we leverage the power of seller financing to transform your investment gain, to allow you to build a portfolio during these times? How can we do that? Okay, so seller financing, essentially, it allows flexibility. It allows be able to buy properties without the hassles of dealing with banks and taking loan applications, bank applications, and things like that. And as I mentioned, there's a strategy called Subject To, which I'll be going a bit more detail later on. That allows you to take over an existing mortgage. So if a seller has a mortgage in place and and they want to sell their house, they may be open to what we call a subject to financing, where you take over the payments, and you can do that with minimal or little down, and and do on. I said, well, I've done that before, and I'll give you my experiences in doing that, the good, the bad, the ugly. And the other one is the power of lease options. As I said before, lease option, it does allow you, some people call it rent to own, whereby it allows a buyer to essentially rent the property with the option to buy it in the future at a predetermined price. So the seller may, for whatever reason, decide that they don't need all their money right now, and they may be open to renting the property, and you buy it at a future date. Okay, I know it sounds weird, but there are sellers like that, and so on. So you agree on a price at a predetermined price, say a year or 2 or 3 years from now, and so the buyer has the option to exercise their rights to purchase the property in 1, 2, 3, 4 years from now, or whatever it is, and so on. So it can be a low risk entry, and it's a strategy which can do well. So if the market goes up, prices go up, then you may be able to buy the house. If you agreed on at a price a year or so, you may be able to buy the house at a discount, because you've agreed on the price when you when at the beginning of this thing, so you can exercise your option whenever you do so. Okay, so next thing is how do you actually, the nuts and bolts of actually executing seller financing. And it does require some negotiations. Most sellers, as we all know, all they want to do is just be rid of this property, get the money, and move on with their life. They want to take the money and run. They don't want to get involved with taking a second loan. They don't want to get involved with you taking over their mortgage, do a rent or renting a house. They just want their money and run. Okay, so not every seller is open to seller financing, despite what the gurus tell you. And so the bottom line is, to broach the subject and to convince the seller that this could be something that they may want to consider, there's some level of negotiations that will have to take place between you and the seller. So the question is, how can you secure favorable terms in seller financing deals? How can you secure these terms, which is a win for you and also a win for the seller? Okay, so a critical aspect of any seller financing strategy is that you, as the investor, have to really do some thorough due diligence. If you're going to, and due diligence means essentially do your homework to make sure that you're going into this thing with your eyes open. You know what you're getting into. The seller knows what they're getting into. You are familiar with the pros and cons. The seller is also familiar with the pros and cons, and everyone's going into this thing, with their eyes open. So, if you're going to be doing subject to, you better know, obviously, the rate of the loan that you're taking over, any particular terms that the loan may have. You need to know all that stuff. And another big thing is what we call the due on sale clause. You better know if the loan that you're taking over has a due on clause, part of that. And what that means is that typically when there's a transfer in title, which is what takes place with subject to, the mortgage still stays in the owner's name, but the title transfers from them to you. So you are now the legal owner. You're buying the house subject to the existing financing. So you are now the legal owner of this property during this transaction, but the mortgage is in the name of the seller. Okay, so you're taking over their mortgage. It says a lot of lenders, if there's a change in title, a transfer, like in this case, from the owner to you, then they want to make sure the loan gets paid off, and so on. So they have buried in their documents usually what we call a due on sale clause, which essentially gives them the right to call them loan due, i.e., call that ask that you pay off the loan, and so on. So there are some legal implications. My experience, though, is that most lenders don't really care. As long as you make the payments, that's really more important to them, is that the loan is paid off as agreed. And so technically they do have the right to exercise the due on sale, but in many cases they don't. Again, I'm not an attorney, so please seek counsel if you're going to go this way, which means that also you better have all the right documents in place. So legal documentation is also very important whenever you do creative financing, seller financing, things like that. The documents that should clearly, or the contracts, I suppose, or the agreements between you and the seller should clearly indicate things like the amount borrowed, the terms, the conditions, and the interest rates and things like that, because you want to protect all parties, and so on. So this is how you secure favorable terms, is through negotiations, to do some due diligence to make sure that you don't lose the house because the lender is going to implement or the due on sale clause and things like that. Okay, so there's some homework that you're going to need to do, and to sort of proceed with that. And then the next one is, how do you mitigate risks? Okay, and as I said before, a lot of it is going to be your homework, your due diligence, to make sure that you're able to do this, and to make sure that all the documents are in place, or the T's are crossed and I's are dotted, T's are crossed, and whatever that saying goes, in doing this. So the question then becomes, how can you protect yourself through the due diligence? And that's where the homework, that's what, things that we do. Check out the documents that the seller has if you're going to take over. Check out the contracts if you're going to if you're going to borrow money from them, and make sure you agree on the terms, the conditions, and all that kind of different things. Okay, so next thing is going to be, let's have a look. So we're going to be going to the what do you call it, Q&A shortly. So if you've got some questions that you want to pose to me, if you want to pick my brain, please do so. It could be on anything to do with seller financing. It could be anything to do with real estate investing. I'm all ears, and if I can help you, I certainly will do that. So the question becomes, the next one is mastering, sort of some of the common seller financing strategies. And this is where I'm going to go to a bit more detail on the three common seller financing strategies that a lot of people do use, and that's going to be what we call the subject to, rent to own or lease option, and also with seller carrybacks. I'm going to go into a bit more detail, and maybe cite some examples, and also we'll give you some action items if you decide you want to pursue that in more detail. So if you want to pursue any of these things, I'm going to give you some action items that you can start working on today, and hopefully you'll be able to implement some of these seller financing strategies, which I'm going to talk about right now. So the first one I'm going to talk about is, the common strategy, as I said before, is subject to lease options and seller carryback. So let's talk about subject to. And, in my opinion, it can be a gateway to property ownership. I think I've done about 3 subject tos over the years. And so the question becomes, first of all, what is subject to? What am I talking about when I say subject to? What that means is that you are you're buying a house from a seller subject to their existing financing, i.e., you're buying the house with the financing in place. You're taking over the seller's financing, okay, the loan, the mortgage, and you're buying the house. Okay, so the title transfers from the seller to you, but the mortgage remains in the seller's name. Okay, and as you can see, not all sellers are okay with that, because especially this is the part which I find very troubling with some of these gurus, and when they sort of profess this strategy, is that if the loan is in the seller's name, and if you don't have integrity, then you may say, well, it's not in my name, so so what if I don't pay? And so if you don't pay, technically it's not going to come back to haunt you. No, it's going to haunt the seller who allowed you to take over their mortgage. So their credit's going to get dinged, and the seller's going to, the mortgage company's going to go after them, and so on. So I always suggest doing subject to, if you as the investor have integrity, and you, the investor, are going to do the right thing, and you, the investor, are going to do whatever it takes to keep the loan current. Okay, that's one of the things which I realize, is that there's a lot of trust that the seller is placing on you, and it's really important that you do the right thing and you keep that loan current. Sometimes the loan is behind in terms of arrears. So your job as taking over the loan is to bring that loan current, and then make sure it's kept current as you move forward. So again, in subject to, the existing loan stays in place. You keep the loan in the seller's name, and therefore you don't have to apply for a new loan, a new mortgage, and so on. That's the beauty of it. And then you just negotiate with the seller in terms of the equity. If there is any equity, how are you going to split that? Does the seller want it? The seller doesn't want it. There's maybe 50-50, whatever it is. That's the terms that you agree to, and so on. So again, if you're going to exercise or at least explore using subject to financing strategy, then you better do some due diligence to make sure that the loan is in fact a good one, and there are no quirky fine print that could come back to haunt you. So again, the disadvantage is that in theory, the seller's mortgage company could exercise the due on sale clause and call the loan due. And what that means is that now you have to pay that loan off. Again, based on experience, at least with me, I've never had that happen. As long as I make the payments, most of the times the lenders are okay with that. So let's just give an example. Let's say we're going to buy a house for $250,000, and it has an existing mortgage of $180,000. Okay, so it's the property is valued at $250,000, and there's an existing loan for $180,000, and so you're going to negotiate a subject to transaction with the seller, whereby you assume that $180,000 loan, you're taking it over, okay, and let's just say the seller wants $10,000, and just to wish them a merry, go on their way, and so on. So you now are going to raise that $10,000. You've got to come up with $10K to pay the seller, and then you're going to take over the $180,000 existing mortgage. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense on how we could use subject to strategy to buy a house. Obviously, it takes a certain type of seller. Normally, sellers that are open to this are either in a state of distress, or they don't need their money up front, or they just want to wash their hands off this house for whatever reason. It's an albatross around their necks, and they just want to be done with it. Or another common way is that the seller is having a hard time selling the house, and therefore the only way they can sell it is to come up with some kind of creative financing where they can help the buyer acquire the property and so on. So what are some of the action items that if you want to implement subject to strategy? First one is you want to do some research on due on sale clauses in mortgages, and you better understand the potential risk. And the other thing is to consult legal advice. Get some legal advice in terms of the contracts. Make sure it's airtight, and make sure that the seller understands that the loan will stay in their name, and the seller understands the risks associated with this transaction. So they're the action items that you may want to consider if you are doing subject to. And I have gotten a call, so I will turn my phone off. As they say, do as I say, not as I do. So let me turn my phone off, so that way I won't get interrupted. Let's have a look. Let's turn my phone off. There it is. Okay. Next thing we're going to talk about is lease options. That's another strategy, and that's a good strategy in uncertain markets as well. I've been on the other side on lease options, which is where I'm the seller, I'm the owner of the property, and I'm in the process of trying to sell the property. Okay, and I've tried this strategy several times where I've given tenants, renters, the opportunity to rent the house, and with the goal that one day they will own the house. Okay, so that's a good way. If I'm looking for market renters, obviously Section 8, you're not going to be able to do that. But with market renters, a lot of market renters will, I think they perceive themselves, at least they see themselves one day owning something. And so you're giving them an opportunity which otherwise they'll never have. They'll be an eternal renter. So this is a strategy of whereby you can give people, an incentive to rent from you, because one day, if they like the house, they can purchase the house. They can exercise their options. That's the theory behind it. I've just never had anybody actually exercise that option, for whatever reason. And, they can't come up with the down payment money. They can't qualify for the loan. They change their mind. They want to move on to their life somewhere else. And I've just never had a success with a renter actually buying a home from me, which is okay with me because I'm not really looking to sell the house anyway. But I'm just giving people an opportunity to hopefully one day be a owner as opposed to an eternal renter. So let's talk about that in a bit more detail. So again, it gives you, if you're the buyer or the renter, the right to lease or rent the property with an option, which means that you have the right, as part of the agreement, to buy that house in the future on in a predetermined window, and usually you set a price for which the buyer is able to purchase the property for. Okay, so I'll make sure I understand. You understand this one. It allows somebody who's a renter an opportunity to get in and buy a house, at a future date for an agreed upon price. Okay, that's the gist behind the lease option or the rent to own strategy. And again, the good thing about it is that you don't need a lot of money to get in if you're on the buy side. Since you're buying the house at a predetermined price in the future, you may be able to be a beneficiary of appreciation. Okay, you may be able to buy a house at today's prices a year or 2 years from now. Okay, and it does give you time to secure financing. So you can start building your credit. You can start building your down payment during that option period, such that when you exercise the option, you have the down payment, you have the credit, you have the ability to qualify for a loan, and therefore you're able to purchase the home. Okay, so that's on the plus side. Obviously, in my cases, I just didn't find people to buy it, so they never did exercise their options. So let's just give you an example. It's 7:28 now. Okay, so I've got a few more minutes. Let's just give an example. Just say, for instance, you are going to rent a property for $2,500 a month, $2,500 a month, and you agree with the seller that you have 2 years in order to exercise that option at a predetermined price. Let's say $300,000. Okay, so let's just say that in 2 years' time, the price of the house has gone up from 300 to, let's say, 325, and now you're able to buy this property that's now worth 325 at a $300,000 price. Okay, you've been a beneficiary of appreciation. There's usually a down payment, an option money that you have to put up front, and so on. So there's a lot more detail with lease options or rent to own, which I don't think I'm going to have time. Maybe I'll do a session on that just by itself, because you can have it whereby a portion of the rent goes towards the down payment, and therefore they can start building down payment money. And also you can get them to start working with a mortgage company, and therefore the mortgage company will be working with them such that they can qualify for a mortgage, at the time whereby you're going to exercise your option. So these are some of the things that are possible with the rent-to-own lease option strategy. Let's talk about some action items if you want to pursue this strategy. There's negotiations, and so obviously you're going to need to develop your negotiation skills in order to get the best terms for you from the seller. And also you want to research market trends. You don't want to buy a house or put it under option, and a year or 2 years from now the price has gone down, and because you may be stuck at being able to buy that house at a year or two's price, which may have gone down as opposed to gone up. So there are flip sides, obviously, with the option, and but it does require a bit more due diligence on you, and it's going to require you to get some legal advice to make sure that the agreement that you have with the seller is airtight. Okay, so next one we're going to talk about is seller carryback, seller financing, bridging the gap, between what you have and what you need. So let's have a look. So in seller carryback, the seller acts as the banker. The seller acts as the lender. Okay, so they're going to be the lender. They're going to facilitate your ability to buy the house through their financing. Okay, so they're going to give you a loan, either by, you can use the subject to, whereby they allow you to take over the loan. Okay, or if you still need money, rather than you going out and get money, they will borrow you the money, so you pay them back. So they're the bank, so you're going to pay them the monies every month, every quarter, whatever you agree on, at a predetermined price in terms of interest rates, the terms, and those kind of different things. Okay, so it does require some negotiation between you and the seller, and obviously it's a contract, it's an agreement, so there are some contractual legal documentation that you need to have in place, and you need to make sure that all parties are on the same page and there's no misunderstanding. So let's give an example then. Let's say you got a property at $300K, as like last time, and the seller agrees to sell with a $50,000 down payment. So the seller agrees will carry a $250,000 balance, but they're expecting you to come up with $50K. Okay, so you got that one. So instead of you getting a new loan for $250,000, they will be the bank and borrow you. They don't need the money. I know it's sometimes difficult for you to understand, but sometimes, some sellers just don't need the money. In fact, they would rather not have the money, because if they had the money, they'll be subject to some form of, taxes, some form of sort of capital gains taxes. So sometimes they would rather have the money over a period of time as opposed to lump sum, just for tax purposes and so on. So so they will take back a second, and you agree with them, let's say 5% interest rate on 15-year term. So every month you'll be paying your $250,000 loan, and on top of that, you're also going to be paying the loan to the seller if they borrowed you some of that money. Okay, so what are some of the action items in Seller Carryback that you may want to consider doing? Again, it's negotiations. You have to convince the seller this is what they want to do. So you're going to have to build rapport. You're going to have to develop some communication skills, customer service skills, interpersonal skills, and also it's a contract. So you're going to need to make sure that you have some counsel from legal professionals to make sure that your documents, your agreements are airtight, and it protects you and also protects the seller. Okay, so so I just gave you 3 examples: subject to, lease options, rent to own, and also seller carryback. There are so many other types of seller financing strategies. We just don't have enough time to go into much detail about all those, but I wanted to share with you the top 3, and I've done all 3, so I have some experience about them, and I wanted to share that with you today. So you know, as I said before, not everybody wants to you know, get cash, take cash. They want to stagger it over a few months or a year and things like that. So there are a lot of sellers out there that would be open to seller financing. They just don't know. And so they're going to default to the most common thing, which is I want all my money now. When in fact, that may not be what really what they want. So there is some, you know, creativity that's that you can exercise, and some negotiations that you can sort of, you know, get into, and hopefully if it works for you and it works for the seller, this could be a strategy that you may want to implement. So in conclusion, wrapping up now at 7:34. You know, in mastering seller financing, you know, it's a great strategy for adapting to market shifts as the banks you know, tighten their lending requirements. It sometimes gives you the opportunity to go to a seller and see if the seller will finance the deal. And so as you know, investigate seller financing in more detail, remember that it's not just a tool, but it really could be a pathway to financial independence if you do it right. You know, so really by understanding the nuances of subject to, lease options, and seller carryback, you know, it could give you an advantage over your competition, because now you can offer the seller some alternatives which other people may not be able to. And it's not going to work for all sellers, but some sellers may be open to it, and therefore it allows you to differentiate yourself from maybe another person that also wants to buy from the seller. So with creativity, knowledge, and determination, you're not just really an investor. You're you know, you're trying to be a master of your real estate game, and which ultimately will help you on your journey to financial independence. And you know, so if you're going to embark on this journey, though, make sure that you can negotiate with confidence. You're good at negotiation. Make sure that you conduct thorough due diligence. Make sure you do your homework there. And also make sure you consult with legal counsel to make sure that you're staying on the right side of the law, and it doesn't come back to bite you in the future. So in the dynamic environment of real estate, you know, your expertise is really your ticket to financial independence. And if you are able to consider seller financing, that could be another, I don't know, strategy in your toolbox that may come in handy whenever the circumstances makes the most sense. So with that said and done, my friends, I am going to wrap it up for today. We're going to now go to the Ask Dr. Joe Now segment. So if you've got some questions that you want to pose to me, please put them in the chat, whether it's in the YouTube chat or whether it's in the Facebook chat. Pose me the questions, and I'll do my best to try to get to them. And I know it's a little dry, the topic today, seller finance. It's not really sexy. It's not really, you know, whatever you want to call it, but it's a great strategy. And hopefully I was able to, you know, provide you with the foundations to consider, to explore, if that makes sense for you. Okay, let's go to the comments. Who do we have here? Karim. Big fan, excited about today. Same here. Thanks a lot, Kareem. I appreciate it. You're from New York City. I'm looking into your big city bursts. Can I do it remotely? Yes, you can, Karim. If you want to do big city borough, which is what I do, I buy houses, renovate houses. I keep my houses. I don't sell them generally. I'm a long-term player, and in fact, um, yeah, no, I'll wait till next week. We'll see. I'll say it now. I mean, one of my tenants just left today. In fact, that's one of the things I did today. She's been with me for 9 years at one of my properties here in Washington, and it's a 4-bedroom house, and she was upgraded to a 5-bedroom house. So now she left today. I did a walkthrough today, and during that 9 years, and this is really what I hope you listen to this for those people who where you buy is very important. And so during that 9-year period that she's in there, the house has gone up from, I don't know, I think I bought it for 100 and something, or let's say 200K. I bought it. It's now 800 and something in 9 years. Okay. So there's quite a bit of equity that's, developed because of just her being there. And she's a voucher holder. She kept the place in immaculate condition. And, but, in the space of 9 years, there's a lot of equity that's just, developed or created during that time. So what does that mean? It means that it allows us, if we pursue this strategy, to build wealth. You can now take that equity, $600,000-$700,000, and do something with it. Either buy more properties, you could sell the house. I mean, there's just so many different things you can do with that, and that's what the big city borough strategy is all about. The time when I bought it, I wasn't making a whole lot of cash flow. I had some ups and downs, but the bottom line is that in the space of 9 years, we got $500,000-$600,000 worth of equity is built up in that house. So you really don't need a lot of those to fast track your financial independence goals. You just have to take a long-term view. And the way I see it is that you let time do the heavy lifting, not you. Let time do the heavy lifting. That's what this strategy is all about, is that you're leveraging the power of time. And if you can get a good tenant who takes care of the property, pays a rent, pleasant to deal with, and they are looking to stay a long time, that, my friend, is the gist of this thing. It really can work. It really does work once you put it all together. And that's really what the big city borough strategy is all about. So I applaud you, Karim. And if I can help you on your journey, please let me know and see what we can do. But it does work. I mean, it does work, I tell you, especially when you put in there Section 8 and you got that guaranteed income stream. It really is, a good strategy to consider. Okay, Dow2, greetings from Phoenix. Hey, Dow2, nice to meet you again. You're one of the regulars. Badundi, hopefully I pronounced Badundi, Obadasa. Greetings from Atlanta. Same to you. Hope all is well in Atlanta. In this seller financing topic, how would you ensure there's no additional liens on the home? What you want to do is, obviously, you're going to go through settlement through a settlement company. This is not going to be a private deal. You're going to go through a settlement company who's going to make sure they're going to do a lien search. They're going to go to the public records to see what liens, if there are any out there, are associated with this property. And you're going to get title insurance. So it's on the attorney, the settlement company, to make sure that they uncover any liens on this property, and because you're going to be getting title insurance, to protect yourself. So what I'm saying is that you want to make sure that you leverage the settlement company, the title company, to make sure that what you're buying is clear. It's a clean title. There are no hidden liens out there, and if there are, then you have insurance that will cover you. Okay, Badande. Again, apologize if I mispronounce your name. Let's have a look. How do I go about becoming a Section 8 landlord, I purchased the property that was an existing lease, which is set to be, I suppose, set to expire, I assume, February 2024. My plan is to rent it out Section 8. What's your advice on that? Okay. Congratulations. There's no such thing as a Section 8 landlord. What it is that you have a property and you are allowing somebody who has a voucher to rent from you. Okay, so it sounds like in your scenario, Bernardet, you bought a house or property, and there was an existing tenant in place, and that tenant had a voucher, and which is set to expire, I assume, in February 2024. Well, normally these Section 8 contracts, they call them HAP contracts, HAP. They are 1 year initially, and then after that they revert to month to month. And so if you don't want these people out here in your house, and if your laws, the state laws where your property is, allows you to, you can give the tenant a 30-day notice at the end of the lease term. So in your case, it could be February 2024 if you don't want them there. If you want them in place, then obviously, at least in Washington, you don't have to do anything because it automatically reverts to month to month. After a year, you can request a rent increase, and if you are inheriting tenants, then I would suggest that you may want to do some due diligence on the tenants. You want to make sure that they do have the right papers in place. You want to get a copy of their loan application, rental application. So at least you know something about them, their name, the social security number, the rental history, their employment information, all those different things. So you want to make sure that there's an application that the buyer is going to give to you. And so that's the immediate thing I would do. The other thing is that once you buy the property, if you don't already own it, is to introduce yourself to the renters, who you are, what kind of style you have. Hopefully you're a good landlord, and you want a decent property, and you want the tenant to stay a long time. You want to develop a rapport with your tenant. There are human beings, they're not doors, and so treat them as human beings also. And if you can do that, and you can do little other things to make sure that they're happy, then they're more likely to stay with you. So again, I would say congratulations. I would definitely, if the housing authority where you are is reasonable, I'll definitely try and develop some relationships down there. Go see them, explain the situation with you, and hopefully you can have a good, solid relationship with the folks down at your housing authority. Because if you can do that, I think you're way, 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 way ahead of most other people. Good question. Let's have a look. 746. We've got boatload more questions still here. When implementing creative financing, have you used a third-party company to make the payments to the mortgage company? No, well, I haven't. I just pay the mortgage company myself. So typically what I would do, I'll take, let's say the subject twos that I've done, I take over the mortgage. So the mortgage still remains in the seller's name. I rent the property. So every month I get rent from the tenants. And every month I send the money, the payments to the mortgage company. And, they don't really care where the money comes from, that I found anyway. And as long as the money's made. And so I would, that's how I did my subject to. We have an agreement between the seller and I. They were just tired of this house. They wanted out. And so I was able to take it over. And, I think a couple of years ago, so I did this. I've done these. One of the houses, anyway. I think I bought that one in 2003. So it's a good, 10 years or so. Oh, no, it's 2003. So it's 20 years ago. My goodness. So I mean, subject to has been around for a long time. So I've had this property so long, and I think the mortgage is paid off. So it's now free and clear, and so I don't have to worry about subject to anymore because the loan's been paid off. But title was transferred to my name, and so I was the legal owner of the property. from when the transaction took place. But Bundu again. How do I go about becoming a Section 8 landlord? I purchased property. I think I've addressed that question, but Bundu. Now, too, in seller financing, if the buyer for whatever reason stops paying, how would you get the buyer off the title? Would you have to foreclose? Yes. Now, this is where it gets a little interesting. Depending on the state laws, you may, because they're not really technically they're owner, they're on title. So if you want to remove them off title, then you have to foreclose on them. If you're renting, then you may be able to evict them because they don't have a legal title. But they do have an agreement, so it's kind of a gray area. But typically, you'll have to foreclose if they're on title. So if they have a title ownership interest, then I don't think you can evict. You're going to have to foreclose first, and then after you foreclose, i.e., you wipe out their interest, then you can evict them and so on. So yeah, so if you are taking, so in scenario that Dow2 just said, if I own a property and Dow2 wants to buy it from me, and I do some kind of seller financing where he agrees to pay me certain money in exchange for money which I'm borrowing from him. If he doesn't live up to part of his payments, then the question was, what's my resource? What's my recourse? And my understanding of the recourse I have is to foreclose on him, to wipe out his interest, and therefore I can get the property back. So I think that's what your question was about. Let's have a look. Karim, I'm from New York City. I'm looking to get properties out of state and rent it out to Section 8. Can you recommend any areas? And also, how would it work if I would rent it out for Section 8? Okay, so you're in New York City and you're looking to acquire some properties, or at least rent to tenants who have Section 8 vouchers. Can I recommend areas? The Section 8 program is a federal program, so it's what's the right word? It's implemented across the country, so it doesn't matter where you are. It's a federal program, and it's funded and implemented, at least administered locally, and so on. So where do you want to buy? It's up to you. I personally prefer not to buy too far away. So I live in the DC area, so I tend to buy in the DC area. I'm not really too familiar with New York City or other jurisdictions around the country, but I do know my local market, and therefore I've taken the time to understand that market, and I've decided this is where I want to invest. So so it depends on you. There's the old saying, the grass is always greener on the other side. There's no la la la, there's no nirvana. It's just hard work wherever you go. So pick an area that makes sense for you, and take the time to understand that market. Take the time to develop relationships with agents, with contractors, with attorneys, with CPAs, with just take the time to develop relationships with the housing authority, for example, and they can give you some inside information about how it works, where the greatest demand is, if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bedroom houses, and they'll be able to tell you which tenants have the hardest time finding properties. And there may be a landlord, liaison at the housing authority. So you may want to check that out, speak to some people there to get a better understanding of their experiences. So there are lots of different ways to get started, Karim. And hopefully I'll just give you some guide. And hopefully, I think I may do an event soon where we can delve into this a bit more detail. This is a good topic. Thank you. Marlon. Good evening, Dr. Joe. Hope you're doing well. Hey, Marlon. Hope you're doing well as well. Hope you're having a good day. Hope you had a good week. And hopefully you're looking at your next property. This is a good time to buy, sir. And it's not easy. It's competitive, but it never is easy. And it's always competitive. Okay, Karim, big city, Burr. How can I reach out for your help? for you to help. How to find the best areas, what infrastructure I'll need, what finance options are there for that. Key points to keep in mind when looking for property. Yeah, I mean, probably I may do another what's it called, program, JV program. If that's the case, then you're more than welcome to, if you're interested, to be a part of that one. I'm doing a JV wealth builders program with Femi, and he's doing very, very well. He purchased his house a couple of weeks ago. We're doing the rehab, but I'm more involved in this one. We just started the project last week, and they've completed the demo, and they've done some work there. We're in the process of getting the architect in place so he can do his drawings. I mean, we're moving, and I'm going to be involved with this process from start to finish, all the way through to when the new tenants move in. So that's ways we can work. If there are ways that we can work together, Karim, I'll be more than happy to do so. Just shoot me an email, and then we can talk about it. Can you share more light on the inspections? There are lots of different inspections, especially on Section 8. You've got inspections when the tenant first moves in, or at least before the tenant moves in. And the inspections department from the housing authority, they come over and they do what they call a housing quality standards, HQS inspection. They want to check the electrical, check the plumbing, check the heat, check the doors, check the windows, check all that stuff. And then there's an annual inspection or biannual inspection, depending on where you are, where they come back every year or two to make sure that the property is in compliance with HUD guidelines. Okay, let's have a look. PMCA, thank you for taking the time out of your day to give us great advice and great information. You're welcome. PMA TCE. And I'm tired for some reason. I think I had a late night yesterday. And so I'm going to wrap it up on that good note. So hopefully today's session was good. We talked about seller financing. We went into a bit more detail on things like subject to, lease options, rent to own, and also seller carrybacks. I talked about the pros and cons, the action items that you can take, and the importance of having seller financing as part of your toolkit, especially during these changing times. So hopefully you learned quite a few things today, and hopefully you're not going to be intimidated by seller financing, and hopefully you'll be able to pursue your dreams, your goals, your real estate goals. And if I can help you on that journey, please let me know, and I'll do the best that I can. Karim, your one episode changed my viewpoint. Thank you. I'm glad I did. And thank you again. So, my friends, I'm going to wrap it up today, and I'll see you next Wednesday. Life is good. Again, we're going to have this. If you have some real estate questions and you want to book some time with me, we're going to schedule. I'll put the final touches on. I'm going to call it Ask Dr. Joe Now. Ask Dr. Joe Now. That essentially allows you to book some time with me, whether 30 minutes or 60 minutes, where I can answer your specific questions. We can really deep dive, and especially if you want to implement the strategies that that I do, the big city borough, Section 8, landlord in, buy and hold, keeping tenants for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. If you want to learn all that stuff, book some time with me, and we can do a deep dive. If you have any questions that you have, anything that's specific to your situation, I'll be more than happy to delve further and go deep. So, my friends, I'm going to call it a day, and I will see you next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Take care. Bye for now.